Welcome back. You're watching 101. We're talking with the father of lateral thinking, Dr. Edward de Bono, the creative thinker. And it's good to have a chance to chat with you. And I want to look at some of your defining moments. What would you say was the most defining moment for you in your career?
I don't think there was a defining moment. And one of the more pleasurable moments was walking past a bookshop in Chicago, and in the window there was my first book. That's a nice moment.
And now it's been, what, 75 books, I think?
Including the education books, about 74 years.
In 35 odd languages, 37 languages? I think,
no, 41 languages,
wow.
Which actually, I don't know now, but was more than Harry Potter translations. Not more sales, but more translations.
Now, when it comes to adjusting lateral thinking into other languages, are the
Yes.
nuances lost? Is anything lost from what you know?
It's difficult to check because I don't speak all the other languages. But I have been told sometimes by people that what you've just said is right, that the translator misses the point. Yes, it can happen.
What has been for you?
Of course, the translator might improve it too.
I guess there is that, there's that chance. What has been for you the most challenging aspects of your life, do you think?
Well, I wouldn't say challenging, but the most frustrating in a way is that I know these things work in many schools and so on, really spreading, getting people to know, and that's really hard work, and it's not temperamentally, I'm not interested in knocking on committee doors and saying you should listen to me. It's not my style.
Because it has. I mean, you've been asked to come and do things now.
Yes.
So I guess there's a trade-off.
Well, I asked, I'll respond, but I won't try and go around persuading people they should listen to me. That's their problem.
And we talked about the Olympics and how the person organising that said he was able to apply it. What other stories have you heard where lateral thinking really has made a difference?
There are stories, they don't come to mind immediately, but there was a bank, and I think they used to get 3 suggestions a month, and they started using my stuff, and they were getting 300 a day, that sort of thing.
I've read these, amazing statistics.
And another one in South Africa, these workshops, 2 workshops, I think, working for a steel company, and in one afternoon, using just one of the techniques of lateral thinking, they got 21,000 new ideas. So they're pretty big stuff.
Yeah, that's one I read.
And then teaching stuff in school, not necessarily creative thinking, but just thinking. There was one centre in London which takes youngsters too violent to be taught in ordinary schools. They've stabbed the teacher, set the school on fire. The principal, David Lane, started teaching my work. He's done a 20-year follow-up and showed that those youngsters taught thinking, the rate of criminal conviction is 1/10 compared to those not taught thinking. Now, of course, it could be they were so smart they didn't get caught.
But it was interesting reading that some certain number of hours. I think it was something like 6 hours of creative thinking, and actually lead to like a 500% increase in employment.
That's right, for unemployed youngsters. Yes, because these were youngsters who left school, had been told they were stupid, and they suddenly realized they were not stupid. There's another story. As a fellow in Ireland came over to see me, he said at school he was so dyslexic, the teacher put him in the back of the class and said, you're going to spend your whole life digging ditches because they're not going to be good for anything else. According to him, he read one of my books, changed his thinking. He's now a very successful businessman, and he came over to tell me.
With the obviously the amount that you yourself have grown, the amount your own knowledge and experience has grown. When you look back at the early work, do you see any flaws in it? Do you see any?
No, I mean, it's like if you enter a new territory and look around, there's a lot to see, but what you first see is still there. So
and how much do you think in that time since originally starting the concept of lateral thinking to now, how much do you think the environment around has changed where you have to perhaps address how it's applied?
Well, no, and what has happened, of course, now is, for instance, many American universities are putting design in their curriculum, which is something I was saying in 1970 and so on, so that's people are beginning to act on it, yes.
Do younger people tend to be more open-minded, you find, to the idea of lateral and creative thinking?
It's difficult to say. I will say when I meet young people, yes, but there may be a lot of young people who I don't meet who don't. But then, interestingly, things like some of the rock groups, like the Pet Shop Boys, the Eurythmics, Peter Gabriel, very keen fans of mine. I was in New York and I was doing a radio interview with Deepak Chopra, and he's a fan of mine too. He likes my work and so on, and he just bought my latest book and so on.
Is there any challenge you've had to undertake which you just could not cope with or couldn't deal with? It was just too great.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of problems people have given me that I haven't given them the best answer, yes, but there's no particular thing which I go to bed saying, I wish I'd solved that, no.
In terms of the puzzles, you've been a great sort of proponent for getting people to think and created the L game puzzle as
Yes.
well. And how are you finding that people adjust to the idea of thinking if they're given these kind of tasks, such as
Well,
puzzles?
I'm not a great, actually not a great advocate of games or puzzles. The L game was a sort of challenge to produce the simplest game ever invented, which it is. And on the other hand, if you say, we look at a chess player, and chess involves a lot of thinking, and you say, surely someone using all that thinking must be a very wise person. But then you look at the private lives of chess players, absolute mess. So the thinking doesn't transfer from the chessboard to the private life. And the thinking from games and puzzles doesn't transfer.
What is it, do you think, about the way you think
Yes.
that makes you so unique?
Well, I think the importance of possibilities, because most of our training is probably from a religious basis, truth, truth, truth. And we don't use possibilities enough, opening up possibilities, opening up new tracks, possibilities. Like I was in the Arizona desert and they showed me these cacti with all these spikes on. And I said, what are the spikes for? They said, it's obvious, to stop animals eating them. I said, wait a bit. There are many parts of the world with plants and animals. Why don't they have spikes on? And there's nothing to do with animals eating them. I'm talking about the small spikes. That's to keep the boundary layer of air next to the plant stationary so you don't lose water from evaporation, transpiration, and so on. And I was telling this to someone who said, you know, the Israeli government's doing top-level research exactly on this point, that if you can grow plants with spikes on, they can grow them in the desert. Nothing to do with animals, whatever. But for decades, people have said, oh, well, animals don't eat them.
It's fascinating. I was reading how you suggested with football, with soccer,
Yes, that's right.
an alternative to the penalty shootout.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I wonder what makes you, and we'll go on to that in a moment, but I wonder
Yeah.
what makes your mind think of something like this. You know, do you watch this and say, wait a minute, there's something wrong with the penalty shootout?
Well, it seemed to me very unfair if, having really fought a grueling game and being just about equal, it all depended on maybe you had one fellow who could shoot good penalties or the goalkeeper made a mistake. It seemed terribly unfair. So my suggestion was very simply that you reflected the nature of the whole game by the number of times the goalkeeper touched the ball, you'd get a minus point, and the side with the least minus points wins, because that reflects what was happening. It also encourages people to shoot at goal and more attacking and all that.
Does it bother you when, you make a suggestion like that? Obviously, the football associations, I doubt they're sort of too keen to adopt these ideas.
No, it doesn't worry me. There's lots of ideas I've had which nothing may happen to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't worry me at all. No.
I wonder, obviously with a mind like yours, it's a hugely creative mind, and you're obviously very capable at expressing it. Do people find you intimidated? Do you find it difficult
I
to
don't
build
think
social
so,
relationships?
because I'm always willing to listen to other people's points of view, and I never set out to prove someone wrong. I'm very happy to accept someone else's point of view as an alternative point of view. I don't feel I've got to prove them wrong to prove I'm right, no.
Is there anything in your life that you've wanted to do? Is there any particular challenges for yourself personally that you've wanted to do you haven't been able to yet?
No, I'm looking for a fat, cross-eyed hunchback to look after me because I'm getting older.
That's
the sort of challenge.
I was going to say you were married for a long time and you then
Yes.
divorced, I think, in 2005.
Something like that.
Was that
yes.
a result of partly the lifestyle?
No, we lived apart for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So now the search for the hunchback is on. You travel a lot, but you don't have much time to look, I think.
No, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Now,
I don't think I'd find one as an air stewardess now.
I think there are restrictions on the width of the aisles there. That's
Yes.
right. So when looking at what you're planning to do, the sort of future ideas you have, is there any next step for you, natural
Well,
next
there
step?
is. I mean, one of the things which is very deficient is language. Language is a sort of encyclopedia of ignorance. It's all the perceptions from the past which limit the way we can look at things. So I'm developing a whole coding system which presently will be on the net. So you can describe very complex situations very directly, very precisely. And there's a need for it in language. Language is limiting our ability.
Is there any sort of big goal you have that we will see that something new?
Well, there's two, and one is the application. I'd like to see all schools worldwide teaching thinking. Maybe I'll create the equivalent of a Nobel Prize for thinking, but this will be worth 1 cent, because thinking's got to have its own value, not because there's $1 million attached to it. So the application of my work, and then there are new frontiers in terms of designing new ways of thinking. Yes, it's always open-ended.
If there's a legacy, if there's a way you'd like to remember, what would the legacy of Edward be?
Well, I think the first thing is thinking is a skill which can be taught quite easily. That's one. Secondly, for the first time in history, taking the mystery out of idea creativity and say it's the result of self-organizing systems which make asymmetric patterns. And when I'm ever talking to physicists and mathematicians, they say, yes, what you're talking makes perfect sense. No mystery, no nonsense about it. So that's what I'd like to be remembered for, yes.
Man who demystified thinking.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Edward de Bono, it's an honor to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.